So this is the predictable continuous deployment talk. Are you guys in the right room? We have apparently an hour between presentations. We timed this to be about 35 to 40 minutes, and then we're going to take some questions afterwards. Is that okay? Great. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the pain that brought us here, the pain to bring all of us to do things a better way, continuous deployment, continuous integration. We're going to talk about general principles about software development, continuous integration, continuous deployment. Maybe use the word DevOps if you dare to do that. And then Johnny really is responsible for the brunt of the presentation. It was just my idea that I put into. And then we're going to talk about a little bit about how we do it with Drupal. And then we have some really smart people that are sitting right here that actually live it every day, right here. So if you have questions, Johnny can answer. We should have a good representation. So what this presentation is not about. So this is not a very, very technical presentation. So we're looking for specific examples, tools. We're going to talk about tools, but we're not going to prescribe a specific tool. We're not going to show you code examples, and as much as I try talking down to realize that I refuse to do so. So you only have him to blame for no live demos. And also, we're going to talk about frameworks. We're going to tell you how we're approaching it. I think there are many different ways of doing it. We're not going to talk about prescribing a specific framework. We're just going to tell you how many times we've tried and all the things that went wrong. All right, so let's get started. If this is not what you're expecting, it's totally okay. We're not going to get hurt. Just set up expectations right now. So this is on our way to Iowa. This is still in Illinois. For our road trip, we actually took an RV trip to where were we in DrupalCorn? New Orleans. Like spending a lot of time in the. So I'm Andy Kuharski. I'm the founder and CEO of ProMedSource. We're a Chicago firm. We do Drupal stuff, and we'll talk about that more.
I'm Johnny Cox. I'm the Director of Technology at ProMedSource.
So we've been doing Drupal for about 8 years, exclusively Drupal for 8 years. We're a full-service firm. We support business, we do web design, development, we do a lot of support work, and support strategy. We've recently added training to our services. Margaret represents the training team. She actually wrote a lot of curriculum for Drupal 8 training for Acquia, and we do focus on certain verticals. Higher ed, government, local, state, federal is some of those. So enough about us. Who are you? This is an obligatory level picture slide. So how many of you guys are developers? Okay, so we're looking at about 40%. How about the sysadmin? 1, 2. All right. How about project managers, stakeholders? Wow. Right? What do you think that means? What does that mean to you?
Don't piss off the PO.
Great. So anybody else who's not represented by a Lego figure? Great. Why should you care about this? So obviously you're in this room. What do you want to know? Why do you care? Is it pain? Are you doing it already?
I'd like to eat supper with my family on a good Monday.
You don't want me to buy me pizza so you can stay till 2 o'clock in the morning? What's wrong with you? Actually, we're done. That's it. That's great. Jeff Gearing guy, you guys know who is this Ansible stuff came across. So there's I want to talk a little bit about DevOps, right? Because I think they use DevOps as the keyword to kind of get accepted here. Thank you. We do mention DevOps a lot. I think it means a lot of things to different people. I used to be a purist and kind of have arguments around our beer closet and say, no, DevOps is a movement. It's not about a tool. It's not about, it's a revolution about developers and operations people. And actually, it's been changed over the world. I think it's misused or it's used in different ways. And this is really written really well. And I think that when we talk about DevOps, I don't want to, have an argument about the definition of it. In the end, it's, let's spend less time arguing about what the definition is, and let's talk about making it mean something to us, whether it's Drupal, whether it's Node, whether it's, some other frameworks. It just talk about making better processes and then building software better. So a lot of principles come out of this book. It's a pretty old book in the internet years, but that years are probably like dog years squared, cubed. What do we want to do? What is my goal from running the company? I would love to say I would like to have this version, and let's press the magic button and make it deploy to production, and everything's well, and I get to go home and have dinner with my kids and do whatever it is that I do afterwards. So that's actually achievable. It's achievable with Drupal, although Drupal 7 makes it really hard to make that. So you guys are working with Drupal. And we're going to talk about some of the ways in which we, and some of the steps and methodologies and thought process where we can make that a reality. So we can pick a version, press the magic button, and we're going to try to look under the hood under things that the methodologies and the thought process and what we do to make it happen. Sounds good, right? All right. So common anti-patterns. So you used that was such a good example. That was the pain that I felt that pain. It was just I was part of the builds and deploys and buying pizza at 2 o'clock in the morning. I still remember those times. They're kind of ingrained. Anybody else have those the late night deploys? Not that one. Okay, so anti-patterns, right? What did we used to do? Documented deploys. Has anybody been part of a documented deploy? Like follow these steps to make that happen, right? Been that, done that. Sometimes we humans forget to take a step. Have to start over, revert, do it over. What do we do if there's a documentation wrong? Did I do something wrong? Let's do it again. Manual testing. So how many of you guys have written test steps for your deployment? Okay. How many of you execute those tests, the next version of the deployment? Right, the next version, you go back and do regression testing. Manual testing, written test cases, great. Manual testing, good. Of course, there's exploratory testing that doesn't cover all the automated test cases that we build. But testing is obviously a key component of being able to go home at night after the deployment with peace. Fixing stuff in production, because production just is missing this one thing that I can just fix right there to make that happen. Right? Anybody done that? You just come up and give this presentation with me. That's great. I mean, it's not great, but yes, we feel the pain. Environment's different in configuration, right? Wrong release time. We sit in the office, we wait until after hours, low traffic, and we hope to get this thing going. All these problems that happen. Production. So another painful story for us. We have the saying, and there's always be developing in production, and that comes from a blog post that was written by one of our developers. And that what really means is we want to develop in the environment that is as production-like as possible. We've got this great story that we always fall back on, where we work with a large federal organization that is national and is an institute and has to do with health. And they had us deploy this production for the very first time, and before we started, we followed the practices. We tried to get the version of the Linux machine that they're doing. They're running Ubuntu. We tested it. Local staging, We have deploying for the very first time in production. We go to production. Everything is great so far. We hit this one section of the site that has some geo information, and it doesn't work. We're like, so we go through the checklist. Everything works. Of course, it works on local, it works on staging, we're going to put everything to the code the same. We, of course, have no access to the production environment. Spend like a long night. Next week, come back, totally defeated, like meal celebration, champagne to be thrown away, pizza boxes all over the place. Next week, spend the whole week, can't get to it, cannot find the problem. Everything's the same. Come to find out, the development environments were different from production. We couldn't get it to production. We were told all the versions of production. We found out that they were running virtual environments that were running on top of an AIX server that was running on a mainframe, and the chipset was totally different that we anticipated. And they couldn't compile a certain Apache module that we needed. And that was really hard. We couldn't, even if at least we had access to a staging environment, so we had a way to test, we could have caught that problem. But so we always try to develop in production. It's a saying that we have around our offices. I think I touched on all of them. Yeah, I don't think I need to talk about more horror stories, right? So some of the key patterns that we try to practice, this is from a presentation that some of our colleagues did a few years ago, one of the DrupalCons. We were really focused on using shut. So some of the key patterns that we focus on in making some of those deployments more successful. So obviously we talked about making environments available early. That comes from that lesson. So making sure that we know exactly where we're going to be deploying. We don't wait until the last minute. We know exactly that those environments are configured the same way as what we're doing either on local or what we're doing in dev and staging. Short and amplify feedback loops. So China's going to talk a little bit about that and how we have very frequent pull requests that make it to environments and test run, and we don't try not to ever have monolithic push, and create reusable deployment procedures. Right. So general guiding principles: create repeatable, reliable process flows and software. Right? So we try to automate almost everything. Another saying that we have around ProMap is we love lazy developers, right? Why do we love lazy developers? And PHP is created, I want to be lazy, I don't want to do the same stuff over and over again. We want to try to automate it. We have to do something over and do it again. Let's script it, let's automate it, let's make it less painful. Bring pain forward, right? So, we also try to bring the pain forward, so it's more painful, and try to eliminate that, right? And that's a principle of continuous improvement. Just try to make small improvements that make maybe a small difference, and then get to where we like to get. Everything is in version control. We try to have everything in version control. Configuration management, code. Obviously, we even have requirements in version control when we switched over to complex. Our requirements are in version control. I do have it. It hurts. Do it more frequently. So we try to bring the pain forward. The idea there is we amplify it and say, what is painful? We talk about it. We try to eliminate that so it's less painful and focus on the next more painful thing. Build quality in. So that's a shameful pull from the lean practices. We want to build quality in. We talk about things like behavioral-driven development, where we start talking about test cases and build those in. We use behat testing and other testing tools to start thinking about what the outcomes will be. And we have our QA teams start at the project kickoff, so they understand what the outcome is for the project. So everyone is responsible for the delivery process, and everybody's responsible for quality, and everybody is responsible for automating that and making that better, right? So it's kind of using continuous improvement. It's there's tons of stuff written about it, from looking at the lean practices to pull you guys heard like the Toyota manufacturing line, when everybody gets to pull the line if something is broken and doesn't work. Of course, sometimes there's, we're not saying that we're 100% perfect in that, but we try to eliminate that one every little bit at a time. All right, this is my last section. This is something that, for me, for the how many managers were in here? There's 3 managers, so I think you'll find that helpful as well. So, so this book was written by Jim and a few other folks, the Phoenix Project. It's a great book, by the way. If you have not read it, I highly recommend it. It reads like a novel. It actually is like a novel about a software development project at the Phoenix Corporation, and it really touches upon better practices around software development, unplanned time, how you work with operations. And some of those authors have started the DevOps Research Project. They published for the last 3 years the State of DevOps report, and their goal is to transform the IT industry by instituting better practices. So for product, for software development, and they found they've made some really great, published some great findings. So if your pain alone can't convince your managers or your P&L responsible people to implement some of these practices, you can drop this on their desk and give them they'll set to the report. So some cool findings. High-performing IT organizations, so those that focus on best DevOps practices, can deploy 200 times more frequently than low-performing organizations. For me, where I stand right now in the organization, what's really striking is that employees, team members of high-performing organizations are 2.2 times more likely to recommend that place as a place of employment to their peers than than folks that work at low-performing IT organizations. And by low-performing, we're really talking about DevOps principles. So what are high-performing DevOps organizations? It focuses on deployment frequency, right? So how frequently do we deploy? Do you guys deploy to production or staging? Is it like daily, weekly, monthly, whatever? Okay, great. So you guys have that worked in. So if you want to measure yourself, you can actually if you buy their book, you can fill out a survey, and they'll they have a survey, and they'll grant you a pretty broad set of responses that they've gotten for best practices. Mean time to recover, mean time to changes, and then failure rate, right? The other interesting piece of that report is that DevOps starts outside of IT. Well, it starts with management. So one of the key and important aspects of making things more automated and better and deployable is breaking down the work tasks to smaller chunks of work. So that made it, that's basically a requirement. And again, if you want to use this to convince folks that are responsible for time allotment to make an investment in what you're doing, here are some of the things that folks that work in high-performing organizations say about their workplace. More likely to say that. So now we kind of start getting into the actual meat and potatoes of this stuff. So we're going to talk about local environments and what we do to make that less painful to stand up your local. Automated acceptance testing, so we do training, we do a lot of BHAT type stuff. We looked at visual automated testing. We don't do capacity testing, actually, so I'm not trying to fault that guys here. And of course, the release process. So Johnny is going to take over and talk about the predictable continuous integration process here.
Can you try to zoom that?
Which one?
The big one, I assume it might be the issue. Is there any buttons or anything for it?
Is there a remote for the screen?
I will post these slides. How about this? I will work on getting these slides within 30 minutes after. Follow ProMetSource. Follow us at Twitter at ProMetSource, and then I'll hit slide deck to you guys out.
If you have a remote, there's a Zoom button. I think that's what he's talking about. It's for the TV. Yeah.
This remote?
Yeah. remote was a lot smaller than the other one.
Yeah, when
It didn't
Angie
have a
was up there
screen and or
earlier, she
computer.
had
Right.
Only the DevOps guys were able to help you with that.
This integration stuff we're doing.
Johnny, why don't you continue, and I'll just kind of distract you while you're doing it.
Great. So this is a real world
Yeah, this is-
play, right?
So much for that demo.
Right. See, I have done demos. I have done presentations before. No live demos.
Order pizzas.
Yeah, so I didn't order pizzas for that. So I am in charge of the technology team. I've been with ProMat 5 years. We were already on the road to CI and DevOps when I started. This is. Guess what the slide's about? No. This is a really nice slide from our marketing team. You can see, it's very obvious, things only go once from each environment, right? Does everybody believe that? Is that the way things really work? Like it goes from your local to dev? I think when we started here, we had the problem we were trying to address is we have development going on. It's on our local. And how do we get what the developer is seeing on their local all the way to the production environment? And this has been a really particularly nasty problem for all of software. It's more challenging with Drupal because we have configuration in the database. Not only do we have configuration in the database, we have different hosting topologies that we're deploying to. So we're deploying to Windows servers, Ubuntu, CentOS. Becomes much more challenging. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where we started and some of the things that we do at ProMat to overcome some of those challenges. When we started 2010, we had a sysadmin very interested in making life better. And the challenge then really was that we needed to stand up environments. They needed to be the same across different, we needed different developers, all the developers to have access. We needed to be able to stand up dev, prod, staging, make sure all of those were the same. And Chef was a tool we used for that. One of the things about Chef is Chef also, it's an orchestration tool. So we started setting up and using it to deploy our Drupal as well. So you can still search, and this is our version 1.1 of the project. You can find this. It'll be an outdated Drupal, but it will build a Drupal for you that will run. So this is a journey. If we were on this, I think ProMat, we're somewhere, we've just stepped upright, and what we have is, this is kind of on the left where we started. It's very similar to dance lessons. I know all of you are like developers, so you probably need or have taken dance lessons. So you get one step, and then you build on that step. So we started out with Get. I don't think there's ever a time that we didn't use Get, and we have features. And then you start going along, and you go, oh, well, there's this other thing that affects me, and I need some way to help build that. I started building the list, and I think there's maybe 25 things, like SAS or Compass, like you have Grunt, Gulp, all these other tools that run. It was way larger than the slide that I have. So we don't use the same tools that we used last year. I guarantee you we will not be using these same tools 6 months from now. Is that as we move and as we change, we're always looking for better tools of how to deploy. Okay. So we've adapted. As Andy said, we've read several of these books, and we've pulled out the 10 things that we think are the most important for continuous integration. And the very first one is revision control. So revision control is where we store the Drupal. It's where we store the configuration for the server. It's where we store developer access. It's where, that's awesome. Yay. Right. All of our build process at ProMat is really triggered by revision control. If you're setting up your local, the first thing you need is Git. You know, if we're setting up a server, the first thing you need is Git. If we're adding a user, the first thing we need is Git. It's really the foundation. Our Git workflow is what triggers our entire process. We'll talk a little bit about how that that works. Is that the convention that you use for getting, pulling, merging, tagging, branching triggers all of the events that happen that control the deployments of ProMat. The first place we started with as a developer is, you need to start with your local. And when like 5-6 years ago, goodness, we started with everyone's using Mac. We're a Mac-based shop, so you got Mac. And anyone use Mac? Has used it? Got PHP path problems? Yeah, well, like, pretty soon you realize that Map's a great tool. Maybe if I was working on only one project and I configured it, it would be great. Supposed to switch PHP paths, I was never able to get that to work the same way every time. So pretty soon we moved to Vagrant and VirtualBox. That gave us the ability to start with a project, look at that project and say, okay, this client is using CentOS, they're PHP 5.4, they have these, they're using Apache, they have these Apache modules enabled. Client number 2 has Nginx, they have Solar installed on the box, they're 5.6. And you're developing on a production-like environment when you're working on that local. It prevents the occurrence when the developer is working. They have a further version of PHP, but the downstream production environment's lower, so your code fails. Really a pretty big change. All of our projects currently are set up where they use Vagrant environments. There's a box built for those. And the team maintains that. For Drupal 8, the dev team is just now working on using Docker. I'm really excited about Docker. We're not using it in all of our environments. It looks to be a big improvement over Vagrant as far as the size download. One of the challenges we have as a company, we are a fully distributed company, both nationally and internationally. So when you have a 15 gigabyte download, it's a problem. Not everyone has gigabit internet. So really the center of what we have centered our CI on is continuous integration server. There are a lot of different options to choose from. We've used Travis CI, we've used Jenkins. I know Pantheon a lot uses Circle CI. You can use Bamboo. I don't think it matters which one of these you choose. Pick one, use it for your team. What it is a task runner that will capture the console and it'll give you a report on the success or fail of tasks that run for your automation. So before I show you the next slide, I have picked the best example of a project at ProMat. So we maintain over 200 sites. Not all sites are this level of automation. So this is a project that we developed. It's a project we have ongoing work on. We do support projects, and we try to do our best effort on those. So as we're working, it's a continuous effort by the entire team to work and improve those deployments. Catherine was mentioning earlier, she worked, Catherine, you worked with us 6 months?
Last in September.
Okay, a year. Oops. Shame on me. She saw, part of the transition where we fully integrated Jenkins into our projects, where probably over 90% of our projects have CI integration into them. So This is an example. We use HipChat for our internal integration, and we, rather than pushing a button, as Andy mentioned, we have triggered this, all of our automation off of get tags and get pull requests. So in this project, you can see where GitHub, there's a new tag that's made here. Anthony makes that tag. That's not at the same time. This is a commit down below. A pull request has been merged. In our workflow, every time a pull request from a developer developing on their local is merged, that triggers the Jenkins job that will build development. When there's testing involved, we also attach the Vagrant test. So this project has Vagrant included with it as well. And those test results are available as soon as that builds. So you can see one environment it succeeds, one environment it fails. Those are available immediately. So what have we got from our principles? We've got revision control because we're using Git. We've got build automation. We're automating the deployment. It happens every time. As a project manager, you can look and see, was my issue committed? Did that build? I can go look at it right now in dev. I don't have to wait till tomorrow. I don't have to wait till next week. I don't have to go, Eric, hey man, have you committed that? Can you build that for me? I'd like to look at that. It'd be cool if we could test it maybe. The self-testing build. We have the Vagrant test built in. We know we're testing in the clone of production because when the project was initiated, that Vagrant box was built and configured like the client's environment. Frequent commits. This is more of a, by convention, is that each one of our projects has one of these HipChat rooms set up, and it's expected if you have a project that you are committing per issue and that you're committing each day so that work is seen. What you're trying to prevent is, we're a team environment. We have like 40 people. Those people are not only in different places in the US, they're different places across the world. You wait 3 days to commit something, you're going to be behind, and that's going to fail when it merges. So your code's consolidated. It builds immediately, the builds build fast, the build is available, and your test results are right there. I was a little bit excited to see this because when we started, we had maybe half of these items as late as like 18 months ago, the last time I reviewed, went through the list and looked at it. So it's pretty exciting. To take a look at what this looks like when we drill down, I can, code review, that's a little bit. This gives me, so as a project manager or as a developer, I can go look, someone can go look at the build, they can tell exactly what get commit, they can tell exactly what issues were in that build, and again, that's by convention. In our get process, you have to tag the issue that you're working on. That integrates with our Jira, that integrates with GitHub, that integrates with Jenkins, so we can see what is going on, what is committed. Anybody done the dance where you go well, exactly what is on dev? What issues are addressed in there? As a project, that's hard. If you're not the one deploying it, or maybe even if you are the one deploying it, what is sitting in my dev environment? This is a pretty large project. You can see it takes 53 minutes to build the project. And that is because we are running Vagrant tests. This is an e-commerce project. It's fairly large. Pretty important that we capture people's money correctly, that we bill the right amounts, that it looks correct visually. As a project manager, you can look and see all of these scenarios passed. Now there is one issue with our current instance, and that is that these times on the right for duration are incorrect. This tells me all of the items in Vagrant, what story they're under. It tells me if it's passed or failed, if the test is still running, it tells me if it's missing. Green makes me happy, red makes me sad over in the past. So And there's mornings like people come in and you just like click through those projects and you go, oh, that didn't work, or and it gives you the ability to look back and see what's going. So we also,
But I'm going to interject there, right? The other final issue that we're trying to eliminate is status updates, right? Like when we provide distributed information to everyone, it's available, and I can go through, you can follow up, or account manager is talking to somebody, they have access to the information, and they have information exactly what is going on, so it stops. Kind of getting updates a lot, and making sure that we're
so code review or code, we do manual. This is a manual process. So as that, we said we're kicking off the build when the pull request is merged. There's a simple room that everyone, all the development team is in, that these pull requests are peer reviewed. I thought this was a good exchange because there's a discussion about a pull request and there's actual feedback inside of this chat so we can see. And what we're trying to foster there is, as a team, we're trying to foster that everyone has visibility into everyone else's code and that the team is building on each other's skills. The impetus for this was we had a project where like 2 developers were approving each other's code. Anybody want to guess what the quality of that code was at the end of the project? It wasn't great. Like, hey man, can you approve my code? Everyone's going to look at it. It's just a given. Like, really solves that issue. We also do code sniffer. Any of you use code sniffer? Yay. Better formatted code has less bugs. Better formatted code is easier to debug. Seems really simple. Computers are actually pretty good at telling us this kind of thing. This is a project that we inherited from a client. And these aren't things that are going to break your code, the things we see, but it makes your code harder to read. It makes it harder to debug. It's not good practice. But every time this project runs, we get a report on what exactly is not formatted well. We do have some additional steps we want to add more testing. We're not where we would like to end up as far as testing. A couple of the next steps are we would like to add performance testing. One of the things we do in our configuration management for Ansibles, which is what we use for server configuration now, is that we do install the New Relic plugin on every server that we stand up. So immediately it's added to New Relic. It's in our New Relic console. We're able to look and see that server performance. So, but we do not automatically test, and that's something we would really like to add. One of the things we'd also like to test, I think Andy had a conversation earlier about accessibility. There's some automated tools for testing accessibility. Most projects that we're working on now require accessibility. It's just a good thing to do. Responsive was something that we all adapted a couple years ago. I hope we all adapted to. I'd like to see us add accessibility testing. Thanks, Ann. Thanks for adding that to my presentation. It's awesome. I want to talk about, so I mentioned earlier that we do not automate pushing to production. That's not to say that we don't have automation when we run in production. We do use build scripts, to use environment variables, so that when we build a production, we are just not kicking that off in Get and why for big chickens. It's for some of our deployments, there are some that work through VPNs that it's just physically not possible. We are testing pushing to production. We'll get there. I think we are likely to automate the entire push, however, have it keyed manually from Jenkins, where we fire it as a manual job rather than firing it from code, just to prevent the eventuality of something changed in production and no one knows about it. So this is a little bit of the topography we have to work deploying to. It's by no means comprehensive. I've missed SUSE Linux. We have different versions of Windows Server. We're on Ubuntu. We're on different versions of Ubuntu, of CentOS, Oracle Security Linux. Great fun if you haven't played with that. Amazon, Rackspace, Acquia. The team is working currently on deploying. How many of you are familiar with the concept of production is an artifact of development? Right on. So when we started this dance, you saw that whole stack of tools. So we want, Composer. I think at different times we use Ruby for some tools. We Grunt, Gulp, Compass. Not every hosting environment has that. So the concept for production as an artifact of development is that when you have a release, is to build that release and build the www and the Drupal and not ship your tools with each release. And we are currently in process on that. I think it will really simplify some of the challenges that we have deploying to environments where you can't run some of the tools that you need to build with. So we mentioned at the beginning that we're not going to talk about a prescribed methodology for CI. We didn't start and build this in one step. When is the best time to start using CI? Well, now it. And you don't have to start with all of the steps. In fact, if you try to start with everything, it's going to be really, really overwhelming. We started in our local environment. We didn't even add Jenkins till maybe a couple of years ago. And we didn't add it on every project. It's been within the last 6 months that we've had Jenkins really on every project. So what I will share with you is a list of tools that we started with. One thing I did not talk about here is we did make a switch. If you were looking at the slides very closely, you'll see that we switched from Chef to Ansible. And anyone catch that? So the reason we did that was Ansible is a little bit more accessible for developers. It's a great tool for deploying complex environments. Nothing wrong with it. It's great. Lots of people use it. For our organization, we found Ansible was more accessible for us to use. What I recommend for everyone is to use the tools that work for your organization. If you're very strong in Ansible, or you're very strong in Jenkins, or whatever that is, start there. Start with what you're good at, and build a process that works for your organization. So in the slides, we've included some of the resources that we use. There are lots of presentations on the mechanics. I think there's a presentation later, right after this, on the specific tool. What we tried to talk about here is like why this is important, why it's better. We have the kind of a comprehensive list of tools that we've used. We have a framework, so if you go to the ProMet D7 framework, you can see what we use for some of our projects. We have different versions of this. We're always working on improving that framework. Andy mentioned several books that I strongly recommend. So Phoenix Project, Continuous Delivery is really the book if you want to read about what continuous delivery is about. And I strongly recommend Ansible for DevOps. The link I gave earlier gives you a 50% discount for that book. So, and I recommend it. So now we're to the fun part of questions.
John, we finished in 44 minutes. I'll call it off.
I was project manager. Thanks. All right. Questions, comments? I hate you. Go ahead.
There was a mention on the slides of code consolidation. What do you mean by that?
So that means pulling the code from different developers together. So, Catherine's working on one issue, Eric's working on another issue. We have multiple teams and consolidating all that code together in one place. So, the classic thing is one developer's worked on one thing, another developer's worked on another issue. You go to merge it. Whose code is it that's having the merge issue?
Okay, so frequent.
Yeah, frequent build. And if you're not doing it, it's kind of like backups. If you haven't restored one, you don't know if it works or not. So if you're not merging the code, you have no idea. You really have no idea. It most likely will not work. Classic example, developer we had would be like a week between commits at one time, and they never worked because the head had moved by the time he commits. Lots of rework. So it's more of a by convention than by automation, but it saved us a lot of time.
You come up with any approaches for trying to, break the tasks into things that actually can be brought in without, like it's like, okay, this is breaking it in tests, but it's not going to be what anyone wants to see in production. Or do you use like flags to keep things merged in but disabled, any of that stuff?
So you're talking about like if it's from a user story standpoint, like if it's an epic and you really can't see the pieces. That's really up to the.
Putting out the piece in isn't going to be what anyone wants to see on production.
Feature branch.
Everything works.
Yeah, well, we do have
All the time, yeah.
we do have feature branches for it. So our get flow is to build into features.
We had that recently on a project, and basically we just kept it in the develop branch and worked on that develop branch until we got it done, and then with the automation, we just added a release branch, the release tag to it, and it automatically pushed to the next environment.
Yeah, basically, the feature
Yeah.
is a lot of people working on it.
Yeah, because we didn't want it to go to the next environment until it was complete. So.
We do have so like we support over. I know we support over 100 sites. Lots of sites. We do have, sites that are ongoing and going today that have major revisions that are going. That sometimes the contract or the letter of it is to have a monolithic deployment. So because we have everything in configuration for those projects, we will set up a different environment. And that environment, you will, so you'll have a feature branch and you will keep pulling production into it so that when, 6 months down the line, when you have everything, that you're not going to try to pull production in and you're going to have explosions. So, you got to consolidate that and make sure that your code's going to emit. And our theory is that your code and your changes should be atomic and idempotent so that you can apply them to the code on their own, that they're not dependent. It's a hard concept to get. It doesn't always work like you think. It's a struggle worth having.